and welcome to today's cross-sector regional workforce advisory meeting touching on automation, AI in agriculture and manufacturing. So just to go over a few housekeeping points, feel free to show your faces. We welcome, just anyone being able to turn on their video. Please stay on mute unless you're called upon. Any questions, technical difficulties, or other commentary can be in the chat box. And also this meeting will be recorded and will be provided as post-meeting materials. So with that in mind, I'll pass it on to Trish Kelly from Valley Vision.
Oh, good morning, everybody. So happy that you're all here with us. We have a great group of people joining us, and we have a great group of speakers and presenters and leaders in the field, literally the ag field, as well as the field of all the topics we're going to talk about. We're really excited today to do a cross-sector regional workforce advisory meeting that covers agriculture, water, and environmental technology, food processing and manufacturing, and artificial intelligence through our information and communication technology and digital media. So as we see in the world around us, there's a lot of convergence of these areas, and we wanted to have a conversation where we had people from various aspects of these sectors talking together about what they're seeing, what they're working on today, and what they see coming in the future. So we're taking a little bit different approach today with our agenda, which was we're going to have two panels dealing with the nature of artificial intelligence and automation and technology impacts in our industry. And I do want to thank all of our sponsors from our community colleges and our workforce boards who have invested in this work. We work with the colleges in our 9-county region and our workforce boards, our 4 workforce boards, and also Sacramento County Office of Education, because we're working on pathways from K through 12 up into our community colleges and beyond. And this is a really important industry sector. It's a major part of our regional economy. And so we are looking through this process to work with employers and people doing research in the field, especially the Center of Excellence at Los Rios. So we understand the way industry is transforming and what kind of workforce needs our employers have and how we can help get good information to our faculty and people working in the education system so that we get students properly prepared and trained and let them know about the exciting opportunities that are in this industry and help them be prepared for the future of work. So with that, I would like to introduce our community college regional directors for employer engagement. We're really happy to have them here. We work closely with them. They're the bridge between the industry and the colleges, and they represent the 3 sectors I mentioned. So I'd like to start with Carrie Peterson. She's the Regional Director for Agriculture, Water, and Environmental Technology. So welcome, Carrie.
Thanks, Trish. Welcome, everybody. I'm really glad that we can work with Valley Vision and host these kinds of meetings. This is the 4th one I've done with Trish, I believe, and I think it's the 3rd one I've worked in partnership with Jeff Briggs on. So it's nice that the regional directors can kind of cross-collaborate to bring industry in touch with faculty and our community colleges. So our job as regional directors is to just work with our industry partners to help develop pathways for our students coming out of the programs in the community colleges in our respective sectors to help make sure that there is a clear pathway to employment once they finish our program. So welcome, everybody, and we're happy to have you. I will pass it off to Cornelius.
Hi, everybody. Cornelius Brown here. I'm the regional director for the ICT DM sector. Happy to be here. Happy to collaborate with everyone, and glad to be working with Valley Vision again. So thank you. I'll pass to Jeff.
Hi, everybody. Jeff Briggs, regional director for advanced manufacturing for the North Region Community Colleges. Thank you all for joining us. We have some exciting information to share. We have some great speakers, so I'm looking forward to this talk. So anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff. And I want to note that last fall, well, we do these regional advisory meetings for the colleges in the spring and the fall. And so what we're trying to do is develop and build on what we learn in each meeting to bring forward. But last fall for the ICT advisory, we had a discussion of AI and how it plays out in our lives. And we had one of our speakers today, Gabe Yaltzi, spoke last time about AI in the food and ag system. So really appreciate working with Cornelius to help us bridge how ICT affects all of the industry sector. So in the line of the pathway with ICT, I'd like to introduce Jared Amalong, who's with the Sacramento County Office of Education, and he's been our leader in helping us collaborate with ICT. So Jared.
Thank you, Trish. Such a pleasure to be here this morning with you all. My name is Jared Amalong with the Sacramento County Office of Education. I've really enjoyed working closely with Cornelius and the team of regional directors to explore ways in which our pathways across the region can align with community college opportunities in service of accelerating students' learning in college, right? How can we advance our students towards these high-wage, high-demand careers? So specifically focusing on ICT and computer science, we're seeing quite a bit of growth in the region. And to Trish's point, we believe that specifically in some of these computer science ICT courses, that there is transcendent skills and content that students could apply to ag pathways, to advanced manufacturing pathways. So excited to learn with you all today and explore a common thread potentially in artificial intelligence. So thank you to the Valley Vision team, Trish, for organizing us today.
Thank you, Jared. I'm just so grateful to all of you, and it's been a great experience learning and working with you. And now I am going to bring up, metaphorically, our first employer panel. And the speakers that we have today could really discuss both domains that we're talking about, what's happening now and where is the industry going. But just for the sake of organizing the conversation, we're going to start with 3 speakers who represent various aspects of the sort of the supply chain, if you will, people that are on the ground doing work in the food space, and then farming and food space, and then another person who's helping companies with communication, ICT technology. So what I'm going to do is call on each speaker to give a brief background on themselves and their company, and then we'll have a facilitated discussion. And at the end, we'll have time for some questions and answers. So please also put your questions in the chat box, and Renee and Jesse will kind of manage that for us. So first, I'd like to introduce Greg Ahart, VP of Operations at Superior Farms. So Greg, please give us a little background on you and your company.
Myself personally, I graduated from Lincoln High School a long time ago, spent 2 years at Sierra Community College before I transferred to UC Davis, and graduated from there in June of '95 with an Ag Econ degree, and came to work at Superior Farms at that point in time, and have been here for the 25 years and 10 months since then. Worked through a variety of roles on the operational side at the facility here in Northern California, and spent the last 7 years managing our sales team, and then came back into operations June of 2020 as the VP of Ops. The company itself is headquartered in Sacramento. We're responsible for about 40% of federally inspected slaughter for American lamb. And besides the corporate office in Sacramento and the facility that's out in Dixon, we have a sister facility in Denver, and then smaller satellite operations and distribution centers in Los Angeles, Chicago, and Boston. And so we're distributing lamb nationwide. So locally, if you go into Raley's or Nugget, that's our product, as well as at any Walmart Supercenter nationwide, Kroger nationwide. We do a tremendous amount of food service business with, the Sysco's or US Foods of the world, with restaurant distribution, a total of approaching 500 employees. And those employees range from, hourly based meat cutters in the respective departments up through, master's degree people inside some of the corporate office roles, and, the whole litany of of everything that it takes to be in business these days. But, you know, IT, human resources, all of the stuff that you have to be in business that sometimes people don't realize exist inside an ag-based company.
Greg, how many employees are in the region here about?
There's 40 at the office in Sacramento and another 150 in Dixon.
Okay. To your point, we'd like to explore that further in the conversation, is showing the wide range of jobs that a lot of our companies have that people don't really see, including things like sales and marketing, but I know there's research and development and food safety and all those kind of things. So we really want to show people in the community what these industries and professions look like. So thank you very much, Greg. Now I'll talk to Raf Peeters, from CEO and founder of Qcify, with a very interesting screen background.
Thanks for the intro, Trish, and good morning, everybody. So yeah, my name is Raf Peeters, the founder of Qcify. We're a company that's helping food processing companies with the automation and data collection along their processes. Initially focused on mainly on quality control purposes, basically monitoring the food that makes it to the processing lines, provide them data, and then also more recently we're moving more and more into like inline measurements, data collection, because that was an area where we saw there was a lot of room for improvement, because ultimately most of the food processing facilities have grown to substantial volumes, and some small call it errors left and right have a huge impact on the bottom line of companies these days. And so that's where Qcify fits in. We're a small company. We're at currently 10 people. Majority of them are on the R&D side of things. And that ties into some of the comments that have been made already, like, yeah, where do we find good people? For us, there's a heavy focus on AI, deep learning, computer science and computer vision side of things. But yeah, we also do our own sales. We do outsource manufacturing, because ultimately as a company, you cannot be good at everything. So you have to focus on what your core competencies are. So yeah, we've been in business for about 5 years. Majority of our customers are here in California, mainly in the tree nut industry, almonds, walnuts, and pistachios. But we're expanding fairly rapidly these days. So yeah, we do have operations in Europe where we do R&D also. And then we have a customer base out in Australia. So yeah, that's a little bit on Qcify.
Thank you very much, Raf. And I think as you'll be seeing for all of our speakers, kind of the local, regional, state, and global impacts that a lot of our companies, the environment and the sphere that you're working in, and the, you know, the industry trends that you're going to help us, I think, understand better. And the other thing is just one of the conversations we'll have is, what are the implications for the companies of all the technology changes that are happening, and what you need to do to be able to compete? Raf, you're talking about, you know, all of these tools and the challenges that they're designed to meet. So we'll look forward to talking more about that. And thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Patrick Andersen from Andersen Sons and Shelling. And except for Greg and Gabe, we have a lot of people involved in the tree nut industry, just as it happens. So Patrick, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Patrick Andersen. I'm a 4th generation farmer up in the town of Vina, which is about 2 hours north of Sacramento. And our family farms walnuts and almonds and prunes. We did have cattle back in the day, but we've kind of got rid of those as we grew the tree nut side of things. In 2002, we started Andersen and Sons Shelling, which is our processing side of our company. And we were a walnut processor at that time. So as of today, this last season, we did over 72 million pounds of walnuts through our facility. So we're in the top 5 largest walnut processors in the state. A few years ago, we bought an almond processing company called Western Nut. And so we started processing almonds about 4 or 5 years ago, and we do about 20 million pounds of almonds right now. So I wear multiple hats. So having to manage the 2 processing companies here in Vina, plus also manage over 2,000 acres of farming that our family does too. So it keeps us busy on that side. So on the processing side, we employ about over 200 employees. And on the farming side, we have about 60 employees on our farming side. So we see issues on employees on both aspects, the farming and the processing side. And actually, we're a customer of Qcify, so we have a couple of their machines in our almond plant. So, and then hope one day that we can use them on the walnut side, if Raf can get that part figured out, hopefully here soon. So, so our family, it's mainly my brother and I run the operations. My dad, he's been farming the farm since the 50s. He's semi-retired, so it's mainly my brother and I that run everything. But we do have jobs from, you know, general labor people all the way to operators of machines. I mean, we run laser sorters. We have the Qcify machines. We have automated packing machines. So we have a whole range of different type of machines and operators that we need inside of our facility. One thing we did a few years ago is we moved into the retail sector of custom bagging for retailers domestically. So we bag over probably 20 million units of private label for about 6 different retailers throughout the United States. So when we're actually going through this next year, a multi-million-dollar expansion to where we're going to expand those retail lines to be more fully automated because we see the shortage in employees. So that's going to be a big undertaking on our part. So that's the quick and dirty on our company. So.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And it's really interesting to hear about the vertical integration and also the expansion. So one message you can take from that back out to the community is that there's growth in the industry and there's also technology adoption. There are some workforce challenges. So I'm just continuing on what you said. It sounds like your company has been very open to using technology and adopting new tools. And could you explain a little bit more about sort of what the company's thinking is, where you are on the curve? Because we have heard from or seen some things in the research that it's hard for companies, smaller companies especially, to adopt because it's expensive or the workforce isn't ready or it requires a shift in equipment. So how has that process been for you and your company?
Well, the main focus on why we've done the expansions, because back in 2017, we did a large, about $20 million expansion where we eliminated about 60 employees by using automation because, and there was 2 aspects to the reason why we did it is in California, they raised minimum wage up to $15 an hour, which is a killer for small businesses, and just a shortage of work labor. I mean, we saw the revolving door of trying to hire people nonstop and then working, trying to hire night shifts and weekend shifts and stuff. And it's just, there wasn't the workforce out there for us. So I actually ran a spreadsheet and even though we spent close to $20 million on our expansion, just the labor savings alone actually makes the payment on the expansion. by eliminating those 60 employees. So that was like our main driver on why we did it and how we could justify to the bank on how to pay for it, you know. And that was just the labor savings. That didn't even include the efficiency of it, you know. We increased our efficiencies to where now we only work 4/10s in that department, which was our walnut shelling and packaging department. So it was able to shorten the work week a little bit to give some flexibility. But so that was our main challenges, is just the employees and the cost of the employees. And we feel in California that the next thing is they're going to raise minimum wage to $20 an hour. So it's going to just keep pushing us to go to more automation and buy more machines. And we were actually one of the first nut plants to actually buy enough laser sorters from Tomra to where that's how we eliminated all of our hand sorting. So we bought 12 laser sorting machines from Tomra to where instead of having people hand sort on the tables to do the final sort of the packaging of the walnuts, we let the machines do it. So we had shape recognition machines and laser sorters to sort out all the defects and the product sizes, to where we went down to, we had 20 people per shift sorting on tables, down to sometimes 0 people, and depending on the specifications, 2 people on a sort table. So now we run the whole operation on that department with 15 people, and mainly they're quality control people and machine operators.
So that's you're bringing up a really kind of touchy, interesting topic about labor displacement. And I want to come back to you, Patrick, on that, because some people have felt that the technology is eliminating the lower end, lower skilled jobs, but that creates an opportunity for skills upgrading and helping workers move into better jobs. So I want to come back to you on that issue and delve more into the job quality and the job opportunity side. So Greg, I wanted to ask you the same question for Superior Farms and the approach to technology adoption and the kind of technology that you are using in this space.
As a company, we've always had a mindset of looking around and seeing what's available. And we exist in an industry where there really isn't critical mass for lamb-centric development. You know, we're not a big enough industry that there are all sorts of people building customized equipment or technology that's for us. So really, as we look around, we have to have kind of an open mind and see what's available that could be applied or customized as it relates to what we do. But, you know, historically, 20, 30 years ago, we were always embracing and being early adopters of new packaging technology, new and better ways to do things. We were going down the road of HACCP before it became a governmental regulation 20 some odd years ago. So for us, as we move into this area, we honestly, we see no choice. And it's interesting as you talk about the displacement of employees. As an employee-owned company, talking about going down the road of automation and AI, it becomes a very interesting conversation to talk about what we're doing to reduce our dependency on manual intervention. But at the same time, we can't get enough people in the door. Even working with 3 or 4 different temp agencies to have warm bodies coming in, we cannot fill the needs that we have for employees at this point in time. So for us, it's really become not a want, but a need. And in order for us to meet the demand for the product, we're going down the road of finding machinery that will replace either replace or reduce. So part of what we have to deal with also is ergonomics inside, repetitive motion injuries, ergonomics, finding machinery that'll help with either worker safety or worker longevity in terms of those roles. So we've done a lot of that through the years as we go through the harvest floor. and out into the fabrication department looking at machinery that can assist with that. And then we're in the process right now of working with a company on finished product recognition. So as we disassemble the carcasses and package them into the respective smaller retail cuts, we're actually looking at imagery that can recognize the products based off of the production schedule and get it sorted and boxed and out into, get that out into the warehouse and through the system with less human intervention, because we simply just don't have the bodies here to do it.
Thank you so much, Greg. So you're already adopting and using AI when you talk about the recognition and everything.
We're trying to get there. We are definitely trying to get there. There's a lot of automation that's been brought into the facilities through the years, but now we're going into sort of the logical next step, which is the AI, and seeing what we can do to start to embrace that as well. But again, we have to work with technology providers to either custom build something for us, or we have to go look around at other industries and trade shows that wouldn't have anything to do with meat or lamb, and figure out what's out there that could be tweaked, customized, amended, and adapted to what we do.
Well, so that's that bridge into other technologies or kinds of companies that aren't even in the ag space. Well, I'll come back to you. Yeah, I'll come back to you, Greg, too, on this issue of the workforce side. But it seems like a good bridge to go to Raf now, who is a technology company that supports processors. So Raf, what's your perspective on the comments that have been made and what you're seeing with your customers?
I think there's a common thread or a common theme that you see these days when you walk into pretty much any processing facility, even whether it's food or non-food. And I think both Pat and Greg brought it up. It's how can we keep the plant running with limited supply of people that are just available for it. And I think that is the biggest challenge. And so I know what I'm probably going to say is not the most social thing, but when I walk into any processing facility, I basically look at where do I still see people, because that is something it's getting harder and harder to find good quality people, or find people whatsoever, because production volumes grow, and they have grown substantially over the years. And so in the past, it was always like, okay, let's throw more people at it. And Pat brought it up during his comments. It's like, with the way minimum wages evolved over the years, and especially in recent years, throwing more people at it is no longer a sustainable solution. There's no way that a company can make money if they say, hey, we like people and we're just going to add more of them. And so that's how we interact with companies. It's like, how can we help you solve that people's issue? Because I think moving forward, what you will see in processing facilities is you will have a core group of people that have been with the company for a while, and then you augment or supplement those people with technology. I think that's the manufacturing and the production of the future. But that kind of slowly starts tipping over and like, yeah, but isn't automation and technology going to replace all the jobs? And I think certain jobs, yes, for sure. And which jobs are the first on, I would say, on the block is all the repetitive action jobs. So somebody lifting a box, taking a box here, putting it there, those jobs will be gone. I would even extend it further to like somebody sitting in a forklift, driving from point A to point B, those jobs will be gone. Not immediately, but on the long run, there is no future for those jobs. The same comes to like somebody sitting right next to a line, looking at product that passes by, whether it's lamb or walnuts or almonds, and say, hey, I see this, I'm going to remove this from the line. those jobs, there's no future for those anymore. But those are also jobs where it's hard to find people. Like if you walk into any hand sort room or a room where some people pick out items, you see that the average age in that room is substantially higher than the average age in the workforce in general. And so I think it's a natural process that's happening. And so, yes, jobs will be eliminated, but that's why it's even more important that the industry, together with, let's say, the educational side of things, figure out like, which are those jobs of the future. And so that's why it's important to have these kind of sessions that you guys organize, because it's the food industry, I would say, or industry in general, is in for a major shift. And I think it's going to be a shift that is beyond what we've seen so far, because technology has kind of evolved and it has now gotten to a point where technology in quite a lot of areas outperforms the human's capability or a human's capability. And so yeah, I think there's definitely jobs that will be lost, but I think technology will also help elevate certain other jobs. And so job satisfaction from some people, let's say in quality control, which is a domain we're active in, yes, there is some temporary people that no longer are needed in a facility, but then the core group of QC people, their job gets easier because of technology. And so their job satisfaction goes up and they don't necessarily have to work maybe 7 days a week. We can shorten the work week for them. So I think it's that combination of, yeah, it's not man versus machine, but it's man with machine, so to speak. And I think that's the future. It's just, yeah, people will become supervisors of technology rather than executional. Yeah, people will no longer be robots, so to speak. And so I think that there's an exciting change happening at the moment.
Well, thank you for that overview, Ralph. That's really well said in terms of the opportunity that it provides and the knowledge that the workforce system has to have on how to prepare people for those jobs of the future. What do they look like? How do you get people off the road? Sometimes more challenging jobs from a safety perspective, kind of jobs to the upskilling piece or the reskilling, and provide that pathway for opportunity. So with that, I'd like to have you, Patrick, tell us what does your labor force look like in the other areas, the other types of jobs and occupations you have? What are your workforce challenges, and are you doing any kind of training, or do you work in any partnerships with the colleges to kind of do that upskilling? And where do you see your big labor demands going to get that workforce of the future?
Most of our challenges is just like what Greg has said, is just getting warm bodies to show up and apply. We can't even just get enough people. And it kind of brings up like what Ralph said about the age of the employees. I mean, most of my employees are migrant workers, and to the betterment of them, the older generation that works for us now in the field and even in the facility, they have taught their kids to go to college and get a better job than what they're doing. And that's what a lot of them has. So I think our average age of our worker in our fields is in the 60s. And I bet in the plant, they're probably at least in their 50s, you know, and you don't have that younger generation coming behind them because they've gone to college, got a better job, got an opportunity, you know, to do something else. But I see that it also, we need to expose the opportunities with the automation to the colleges to where we can get people in, or these kids interested, that you can still work in my facility and have a better job, you know, in quality control, an operator, in PLC controls, with this automation, it actually takes a more higher educated person to run these machines. So we need more college educated people that are familiar with these machines. And that's something I know the gentleman I replaced on this panel, Dan Pronsolino, worked very hard with an organization called Western Ag Processors Association. And we actually worked with Fresno State and actually got a tree nut class and lab instituted down there for them to expose kids on what kind of job opportunities there is in the tree nut processing industry, to try to get more of these younger people interested and trained up on that. But and I hope to, once that get established this year, because I think this will be our first year that they actually have classes. I've actually worked with the Dean of Agriculture at Chico State, and he's interested in maybe implementing the same thing once Fresno gets going with theirs and see how it goes. And so I'm excited about that if we can keep that part going. And we've worked with Butte College, which is the community college near us, to try to expose, just do job fairs and other things there to get people to even know what exists at our place. You know, I feel I'm in a little bit of a disadvantage too, because our facility actually sits in a town that has 300 people in it. And a lot of the towns around us are very small communities, you know, 7, 10, 12,000 people. I mean, our largest town is Chico, which is, I think, up to 90 or 100,000 people now, but that's our largest thing. So it's hard to draw people to us because there's not a lot of stuff around us, you know. And even trying to find higher end managers, you know, for departments, I can't even find them because trying to pull them out of the Central Valley or even, you know, Southern California or another state, it's hard to entice them to come to a town of 300 people. So that makes it tough for us also.
Thank you very much, Pat. And well, we want to get, we partner closely with our CSU partners and community colleges in a broader region. And Carrie, for instance, Carrie Peterson, she works in the far north part of the state. So we want to work with you so that we have more opportunity for these kind of hands-on training facilities too, with the colleges in our region. And I think your theme of the career awareness and helping younger people understand and see what the opportunities are in this industry is something that we hear all the time. So we want to work with all of you to help shine the light on what our industries are and what these jobs and opportunities can be. So thank you, Pat. And I'm going to ask Greg also to comment on that question about where you see your future workforce needs going, some of the opportunities for partnerships with the colleges, what kind of things we should be working on in terms of skills building and programming and courses, including across both within the ag industry and the processing, but you've got sales and distribution and everything else going on, as well as the technology side.
Yeah, I was jotting down some notes as Patrick was speaking here about just thoughts as they're popping into my head. And I think the transitionary period is always the hardest. And an example of that would be if we look at our maintenance team right now. You know, there's a series of maintenance personnel around the facility here in Dixon. There's probably 10 people in that department, and it's almost schizophrenic what we're asking them to do. And we're asking these guys to lube machines and turn wrenches and fix robots and reprogram PLCs and communicate with Germany about why the kill floor chains are not synchronized, and then go unplug a drain out back. And it's really, there's a mindset that I honestly don't know how those guys keep from going insane, because maintenance in the future is not what maintenance was in the past. And so I do think there's you know, we're constantly looking to upgrade the the skill set of that team, but we also have to remember that not everything we have is in need of that upgraded skill set right now. So the transitionary phase for that is really a bit of a challenge sometimes. When we look around the plant and we look at the employees and we're talking about 6-day weeks and 10-hour days and not being able to get enough stuff done, we've really been able to bridge the gap about how ready is the workplace for this and how ready are the employees for this. We're not trying to do away with jobs. We're trying to actually get the facility manned. And if we can't man it with people, we can man it with technology so that we can get back to realistic work schedules, work on work family life balance for the teams, and really get somewhere where we're actually getting rest and cutting down on injuries that are due to people being tired and looking but not seeing. And then we have a group here that they're called TechX. There's 5 full-time employees, and there's actually 5 college interns right now, which are purely looking at technology. And we've got a couple of KUKA robots sitting out in the warehouse here that they're working on programming and training to do things. And, you know, in-house, we programmed the robots to do box assembly and have looked at programming the robots to do pelt removal on the kill floor. And we're constantly looking for, whether it's community college or, you know, 4-year school attendees to come in and intern either with TechX or the internship opportunities that are available throughout the rest of the facility or throughout the rest of the organization as well. And we're in the process of implementing a new ERP system. And, you know, if you believe what the propaganda that the sales team for that ERP system told us, it's going to fix absolutely everything inside here in terms of information gathering. And so we'll see how that works out in itself. But everybody is working too hard, too long, too many hours. And as much as anything, since we can't man it, we need to find ways to automate it and fix it so that those that are left don't go insane.
Greg, I'm sorry, I don't know what an ERP is. Is that an employee?
It's the enterprise resource planning. It's the computer system that does everything from finished goods label generation, inventory management, order entry and invoicing, generation of financial statements, all of that. And so our current system is German technology that we've had in place for about a decade, and then we're going into a domestic program right now, and it's about a $2 million software purchase plus installation.
Thank you, Greg. You've touched on a lot of areas. I know in our past manufacturing advisory meetings and the work that we've done with the research side, with the Center of Excellence and with employers, many of you already engaged the maintenance and operational side, the technology, the sensors, all those kind of things. The mechanical engineering pieces are all things that we keep hearing about, and we know that there's a skills gap. And I think the colleges are really trying to hear and respond with that, both with getting the students in the pipeline and then the appropriate classes or courses. So we want to keep working with you on that. And then Raf, just kind of a close to our panel discussion, and then we'll have some questions. How are you going to tie us all together here?
Well, if I had the magic answer, that would be great. But I think ultimately, what I think keeps coming back is like, A, we cannot find enough people, and B, we need technology to complement the operations. And I think us as equipment or technology providers, I think in the past we've been too much in a one-off type of machine type of sales process, and I think moving forward it is more of like, what is that total solution? How can we have systems communicate with each other? And I think there's also a lot of work to be done on our side, and our side being the technology providers. It's like, we do know that if one machine can talk to the other then you don't need a person to run between both of them and look at in one place and say, okay, I see this happening, now I need to go upstream and do this or that. That will alleviate or relieve, put a big relief on the amount of operators, so to speak, needed in a facility. And I think that's one of the things. The other one is also, like, everybody talks about AI and machine learning and computer vision, and very often it's indeed like from an inspection point of view. But AI and deep learning, and we're using that also on our end for customer support, is like that can be used for preventive maintenance. I want to know, like, if we send out a technician somewhere, I would say 95% of the cases we know exactly what's going wrong, because you measure more and more in equipment. And so then that system can tell you, like, hey, this is happening, or it's time to replace this or that part on equipment. And I think that will also take some pressure away from the maintenance departments in processing facilities, where you want to go from a reactive to a proactive mode. And that will take pressure away, because proactive means you can schedule for it. Reactive means something breaks down and now let's all start running to this piece of equipment and get it up and running again. And I think there's a lot of that in the next 5 to 10 years that will be worked on. And I think that is going to be a partnership between, let's say, the customer side being the processing facilities and the technology providers. So I think there's a lot of very positive things that I think are going to happen in the next 5 years, and that will help solve the issue of, like, do we have enough people to sustain this industry?
Well, thank you, Raf, and then we'll make sure that we work with our community colleges and education partners so that we have the workforce for this changing world. And I wanted to start with, so thank you all, the three of you, and now we have a few questions. I'll start with one, and then I'll ask Renee and Jesse to field the questions. But the first one was, can the panel quantify the impact of their labor demands as a result of turnover? So maybe part of the issue you're facing is the aging out of the workforce, but I think you did kind of address that, but maybe Greg and then Patrick, you could address specifically the turnover you see.
Dixon facilities probably operating on the really low side for our industry, and I'd say we're probably about a 30% turnover. Our Denver facility is closer to 200%, and which is much more typical for the meat industry. So anything we can do, you know, the ROI as we look at the increasing of minimum wages, what's the benefit load that goes on an employee? You know, we figure 42% of their salary is spent on benefits as our internal multiplier. So you can pay for technology really fast based on the cost of employees. And especially if you factor anything in about repetitive motion or workplace safety, it's pretty quick to justify the return on investment to pay for technology if you can find or create what you need. But I don't know that I can quantify the labor as easily without typing on a 10 keypad here for a few minutes, but I can tell you that there's definitely some employee turnover and 80% of the crew is stable. It's 70 to 80% of the crew is stable. It's that remaining 20 to 30% is where we see the revolving door as we find the right fit.
Craig, as you mentioned the meat packing side of things too, I know that there were so many safety issues with the pandemic too that you had to deal with additionally, and some higher rates of health issues there. Did you experience that, or as an impact on the turnover, or is it just more of a regular kind of labor shortage or issue around the job?
You know, we were really hit with COVID issues at our Denver plant first. That happened sort of last July and August. And at a facility of roughly 200 people, we were seeing absenteeism of 30 to 40 people a day out of that plant, on top of already being short-staffed. And so it was really challenging getting through that. And you know, we definitely had to make some adjustments and some changes to how we do things, and in terms of employee safety and spacing and things like that. The Dixon plant here, we really had that happen. You know, the COVID onslaught for us here was really right before Christmas, through Christmas and New Year's. And it was tied to, unfortunately, our three main production supervisors are all brothers, and they all got together at Thanksgiving, and one of their daughters was COVID positive, and then it swept through our three main operating departments then. So I wouldn't say that we've had increased turnover due to COVID as much as we certainly both plants have had their absenteeism challenges.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge for everyone. I know, workplace safety and the workers. I wanted to ask a question before I go to Pat. Did you find that the COVID impacts accelerated the adoption of technology, or were you already on the path?
We were already on the path. It really made us a little more frantic about it, or it definitely honed in the focus even more so in terms of we've got to get further down the road faster to make this happen, because we can't survive if another thing like this comes through.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. And then Pat, just some closing comments about those impacts.
On COVID, or the first question?
Yeah, the first question, and then kind of weaving into the turnover side, and then the, you know, did you have any additional impacts through COVID and kind of that acceleration?
On the first question, basically my answer is about the same as what Greg had said. Our turnover, I mean, most of our staff is, like he said, 80–70% of it is pretty stable. There's that 20%, 30% turnover that we have on a repetitive basis every month or throughout the year. We've tried to, and we tried to pinpoint that issue to where it's more on the lower end skills, like our sanitation department. So sanitation here has to work 7 days a week, 24-hour days, because when we're not in production, we have to be cleaning. So, you know, a night shift, a graveyard shift, you know, those are hard to come by. Plus, it's a very labor intensive job. And, you know, that's a job that's not going to be replaced by machines anytime soon. So what we did to try to retain people, because was we raised the wage. So we went to $20 an hour starting out as a general, you know, sanitation cleaning person. And we did find that that did get a little bit better people to where they've stayed around a little bit longer, but it's still, we still have constant turnover in that department. You know, we offer full benefits. I mean, we have, you know, dental, vision, medical, 401k, you know, but we've seen, you know, the lower end labor force doesn't really care about that. They're more about the hourly rate, not so much the benefits. You know, our managers and our supervisors, they're more interested in that part of it. But as for COVID, we were able to stay open the whole time through COVID. We only had a couple people out of the 200 employees that chose to stay home because of concerns of COVID. We did have to do like Greg did, where we had to space some areas out. Luckily, in most of our facility, we were spaced out already, but in our retail lines and some of the packing departments, they were more close quartered. So we had to figure out a way to space them out, or, you know, put plastic dividers in between so we could keep it, because we couldn't just change the machines right away on that. And it seemed like our cases would come in waves, you know, and being that we have a lot of migrant workers, we had found they didn't really care about COVID as much, or didn't seem to think it was a big concern, and they would still get together on the weekends and that night. And then all of a sudden you have their cousins and everybody that work for us, and now you have a whole, you know, half a department that is out on COVID leave because one of them was exposed, you know. So and it seemed like it just came in waves, you know, and then we'd go a month or two with not even a case, and then all of a sudden we'd have 5, you know. So but we were able to shift people around and stay running the whole time, which was nice. So it felt good to be able to keep our employees working through the whole pandemic. But as for equipment, you know, the pandemic or COVID didn't force us into it. It's making us try to make the decision quicker, because I think everyone's moving to automation. So all of the manufacturers are almost a year out, if not longer, to get some of the equipment. So it's like, okay, if we want to implement this, we have to put our order in now for next year. You know.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's another consideration. And I know there's a lot of discussion in manufacturing about the supply chains for equipment, supplies, machinery. So, and, you know, broader discussions about where we are manufacturing all of that. So, well, we're at time now. I want to thank you all for a great discussion, and we'll continue. We're going to have a presentation now from the Center of Excellence, and then we'll have another panel, but please, everybody, put your questions in the chat. I know another question came in. Mike, sorry, we didn't have time to get to that, but want to keep the conversation going beyond the meeting too. So thank you all again for all of your great ideas and perspectives and input. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing. Next, I'd like to introduce Erin Wilshere, who's the Director of the Center of Excellence, and Ebony Benzing, Research Manager. The Center of Excellence does incredible labor market research, and we've worked with Erin and Ebony over the years on many kind of research projects, trying to understand where our industries are going and our labor market demand. And now they're doing a special project for us on AI and automation in the workplace. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, again. I'm Ebony Benzing, and I'm the research manager for the North North Center of Excellence. I'm joined today by my colleague, Erin Wilshere, who is the director for the North or Greater Sacramento Center of Excellence. Our goal today is really just to kind of share an analysis of the workforce trends of automation and AI as we see what's happening in the Greater Sacramento region. Next slide, please. I'm going to kick off the presentation by reviewing some findings from a report that was shared last year about Capital Region and automation risk. I'm going to share just some of the key findings from that report and then suggest some regional strategies that we can all take a look at. Next, Erin will share some current data on what's happening in our workforce with regards to AI and automation. It's going to include some key definitions and concepts, as well as how these things are showing up in jobs. Next slide, please. So to start, back in March of 2020, last year, the COE, in collaboration with Valley Vision, released a report focused on the potential impacts of automation and AI on the Greater Sacramento region's workforce. Truth be told, it's a little bit beyond the Greater Sacramento region, it's a capital region, and that included something about like 90 counties. The report detailed what work tasks, industries, and jobs would be most impacted by pending and fast occurring changes brought on by automation and AI. For the capital region in particular, which is served by 4 workforce boards, about 60% of the jobs were found to be at high and medium risk of automation. These are jobs that had work tasks centered around routine, physical and cognitive tasks and non-routine physical tasks. Certain industries were also projected to be most impacted most, such as hospitality, manufacturing, and ag. We also have occupations that were projected to be impacted most. And those were jobs such as like office and administrative support, retail sales, cashiers, and restaurant workers. The report has much more detailed lists. So I'm going to encourage you guys all to kind of take a look at that if you haven't done so. But at the core of all of this are people, and certain people are going to bear the disproportionate burden of these fast changes in our workplaces. That includes workers in low paid jobs. That includes workers in jobs that require lower levels of education. It included women because of disproportionate levels of employment in jobs that were at higher risk of automation, as well as our BIPOC communities for a similar reason. Next slide, please. And just to kind of bring it all home, I have a little graph here that is showing how work tasks have changed in the US economy since the 1960s. You'll see an orange, a green, and a yellow line there that represent routine manual tasks, non-routine manual tasks, and routine cognitive tasks. And you can see since the 1960s, those have been on the decline. We have other tasks such as working with new information and solving unstructured problems. That's the red and the blue line on the top part of the graph that are on the increase. The key message here is that anything routine, physical or mental, can and probably will be automated, and that's going to hugely impact our workforce. Next slide, please. So the challenge with where we are currently is that we have known unknowns and we have knowns. We really don't know what skills, tasks, and jobs are going to be happening in the future. And we don't necessarily have good mechanisms in place to make predictions for those things that are going to be coming down the pipeline. What we are relying on is what's kind of happening in our workplaces, and we're having employers come in and tell us the things that are happening right now, as evidenced by the previous chat. But there's good research out there that is suggesting that in lieu of focusing exclusively on those unknowns, what are the jobs of the future, what are the skills of the future, that we can turn our attention to the things that will enable our workers to be resilient in these workplaces. Our workers need uniquely human skills and traits to be resilient. That includes skills centered around analytical thinking and complex problem solving, creativity, technology, both use and design, and reasoning. This list that you see on the right hand comes from the World Economic Forum in a report called The Future of Jobs that was released last year. So next slide, please. So what can we do? I'm not going to go through all of these individually. I think I'm just going to wrap this up, my part, just kind of with the broad call to action is like, how can we take what it is that we know, those skills that our workers need to be resilient in the workplace, those uniquely human skills and factors, and ensure that our workers have them. And I think that there's different places for each one of us, depending on whatever role we're in and whatever, that we can play in making those things happen. So that concludes my part of the presentation. Next slide, please.
Oh, well, thanks a lot, Ebony. And I think quite a lot of what I'm going to talk about more specifically related to AI isn't necessarily specifically different. I think a lot of what I'm going to mention here echoes quite a lot of what Ebony and Valley Vision found in their report last year. And so over the last several months, as Trish mentioned, we've been supporting this panel and also Sierra College that's been looking into opportunities with AI. And so the research took me into the literature and the jobs postings that I'll describe here in a little bit. And first, I just wanted to offer a couple of definitions. The one that's listed here from the Oregon Workforce and Talent Development Board, I felt helped summarize a lot of what we read about AI. So I'll just paraphrase the quote here. It says, AI is a collection of capabilities that lead to making decisions. It's different than traditional algorithms because the capabilities learn throughout a process to understand information. AI and machine learning algorithms have to be trained to comprehend an environment. And next slide, please. And so the diagram that's shown here is a representation of the literature that we dove into, and really represents the complexity of overlapping systems that exist with AI. And again, I'll just paraphrase a line here from one of the reports that we read from the National Security Commission. And it says that AI is a constellation of technologies, a collection of technology called the AI stack that requires talent, data, hardware, algorithms, applications, and integration. So we can kind of conceive of AI in this sort of Venn diagram looking thing here that really represents this complex overlapping set of technology and systems. And some of these systems and technologies are related to specific industries. So for example, predictive maintenance is quite related to industrial operations, manufacturing operations, and large logistics operations like ports or fulfillment centers. Other applications are really general across many different industries. So machine learning and cloud computing could be used in R&D for biotech, but also in climate science research. Next slide. So there's a great report that was done last year, a survey that Deloitte conducted that gives us a kind of a framework for thinking about the AI workforce. And the way that they laid this out was by suggesting that there's a category of AI related workers called architects and builders, and then another one called translators and implementers. And this was kind of echoed in a lot of the literature that management consulting policy folks talked about. So on the one hand, you have these sort of technical STEM builders, data scientists, engineers, programmers who are going to be creating AI software and tools. And on the other hand, you have these sort of translators and implementers, business leaders, managers, analysts, technicians, and end users who are going to be integrating these new systems. It turns out that when I did the jobs postings work, that is, use the tool called Burning Glass that we have that crawls around on the job boards and gives us different reports about summary information, is that it really didn't look like there's a hard and fast distinction between these two categories, that AI related positions are going to be highly technical in nature, but also involve a lot of the communication and cross-functional operations to be able to communicate business propositions and opportunities across teams and to executive leadership. There seemed to be a fluid kind of relationship between these two categories, and it wasn't necessarily a hard and fast distinction between the types of workers who are going to be creating and implementing these solutions. Next slide, please. So just kind of giving you some information specifically related to the on-the-ground jobs postings that we uncovered over the last year, and just a few kind of findings to share with you. First of all, there's and I ended up focusing on healthcare and manufacturing in the Sacramento region. And the reason for focusing on those two sectors is that there were just few job postings in general. And so the sample that I was able to gather is essentially from those two industries. And it's worth noting that the number of postings specifically referencing 4 keywords, or phrases, these keywords or phrases are AI, machine learning, natural language processing, or computer vision. This is borrowing from the Deloitte report that conducted similar research. And what we found was in over 1 year period in the greater Sacramento region, there were just 100 postings out of a total 17,000 in healthcare that specifically referenced AI, those 4 keywords. In the manufacturing sector, there was only 140 postings out of 5,600 that specifically mentioned AI. Large employers and specialized technical third-party consulting firms or small business services operations tend to be the types of organizations that are asking for AI specific skills. None of the postings are at the middle skill level. That is to say, we do a lot of work at the community colleges thinking about those jobs that require more than a high school diploma, but less than a bachelor's degree. That's what we refer to as middle skill. There are no postings that I was able to determine were in that space. Most require at least a bachelor's, and most of those require often an advanced degree. Computer science is the most common field that's referenced for educational requirements. Other STEM fields can include, one interesting area was technical marketing, uses a lot of heavy data analysis. Finally, I would just add, there's this whole notion of sort of the translator implementation side. I can think of Greg talking about his maintenance and repair staff. There isn't a whole lot that came up that would provide us with actionable intelligence about what to do with our sort of middle skill or implementation side of the workforce so far, at least in the research. Next slide, please. So I just want to share a little bit about specifically what came up in the jobs postings. So this slide here summarizes the jobs postings related to healthcare industry in Greater Sacramento region. Again, many of these postings are coming from large employers, Anthem Blue Cross, Dignity Health, so forth. Xfusion is a data engineering and architecture firm. Baxter is a medical device company. So here on the slide, you can see a sample of the job titles that came up, a combination of technical, analytics, and management level positions. The types of skills that come up requiring data science, statistics, programming, data and systems architecture, business intelligence, and data visualization. But again, here, notice that there's this important emphasis on the combination of translation skills. So not just the technical aspects here, but also supervising and working across teams, making decision-making for business operations and management, and then again, cross-technical engagement. Next slide, please. So on the manufacturing side, what you can see coming out of the jobs postings is really quite similar. Again, emphasis on large employers, Intel, Bayer, Applied Materials, Merck, Hewlett-Packard, and that the jobs again include a combination of technical engineering, analytics, and management and planning. And the skills similarly emphasizing technical programming, data management, and data visualization. But again, this really big emphasis on the translator side for business operations. Postings mentioning, for example, quote, bringing together technical and business skills, collaborative team member, being able to translate technical concepts for a lay audience. So last slide, please. Just some key takeaways here. I think Ebony and I have had some discussions to where I think we feel like the findings don't necessarily point to any actionable recommendations for AI specific like curriculum development. I think, the jury's still out and we want to learn from our employer partners more about this. But it could be just kind of a few suggestions here for what we might be seeing here is that the lack of AI specific data in the jobs postings could be a data point that's indicating low levels of technology adoption so far. This is anecdotal evidence that we've heard also that there's this kind of chicken and egg, and I think it was brought up in the panel that suggests that we sort of need this trained technical workforce at various different levels to be able to adopt the technology. And yet, how can you do training until there's a job or a specific skill need that's there present currently? Some of the reporting reinforces sort of traditional messages that we just need more STEM workers with bachelor's and advanced degrees, especially in computer science. Again, echoing what Ebony said, this need for generally 21st century new world of work type skills that give our middle skill and other workers business communication, data analysis, and general technical competencies that can stand them in good stead. And I think, echoing what some of our panelists have said, and I think Trish and others, just we really need to continue doing these panels and need to be investing in our regional directors for employer engagement, need to be investing in Valley Vision to continue bringing us together, and certainly appreciate all the participation that's come today from our employer panel and other partners. Let's just keep this work going. So last slide has our contact information there, and happy to continue the conversation today, or please feel free to email us and stay in touch.
Thank you both, Aaron and Ebony, for fabulous information and thought-provoking considerations that you're raising for us. You're right, Aaron and Ebony, it's an ongoing dialogue and inquiry, and we want to keep building your knowledge base with what we're hearing with employers and our faculty working in the field as well, and the regional director. So unfortunately, we knew this was going to happen because it's kind of a tight schedule, but I'm going to direct Ebony and Aaron to the chat room, and a couple really great comments were made in there, including from Raf, and then Dr. Taylor from Sac State mentioned many of the AI careers are still being invented. Huge innovation likely to happen there, especially with the growth of Internet of Things. And that was a question that I had, but we won't talk now. We'll continue, is the data analytics piece. And, it's just so valuable what you and Ebony are doing, Aaron. So continue the conversation in the chat, and then agreed that we want to keep the conversation going beyond this event. It's ongoing, and it's really important to build our relationships and knowledge. And it's a great bridge to our next panel, which is going to talk about industry direction and automation and AI. So this is kind of, as I mentioned, the past panel could have talked about where it's going in the future. But this panel we have is also going to give us that window, building off also the comments of Aaron and Ebony. So first, I'd like to introduce Brendan O'Donnell from Tomra Sorting. You heard one of our past panelists mention that they use Tomra sensor equipment. So I'd like to introduce Brendan. He's been a partner with us on some of our other manufacturing skills development programs. So Brendan, could you join us and give us a little bit of overview of what Tomra Solutions and Sorting does and what your role is in the company, and kind of the background that the other employers discussed? So
Sure,
I'd like
yeah,
to introduce Brendan.
Yeah, we had, so you guys heard a couple references to Tomra earlier in the panel. So you heard Pat Andersen mention the 12 laser sorters that allowed them to eliminate their hand sorters on their Walnut plant. So we work really closely with Andersen and Sons. Are a great partner for us. Good relationship there. You also heard some connection to a Fresno State tree nut processing course through the Western Ag Processors Association, in which Tomra was also involved by donating one of our laser sorters, laser and BSI and other technology, into one of their tree nut processing courses in order to help develop more people that can help this nut the nut processors here in California. TOMRA Sorting is the largest optical sorting company in the world. If you're not familiar with optical sorting, it's exactly what it sounds like. We use various types of optics in order to sort different types of products. So it could be anything from cameras to lasers, X-rays, hyperspectral, multispectral, just different types of optics. And then you're just trying to sort different products. So it could be good almonds versus insect damage almonds. It could be ore that comes from a mine versus diamonds. It could be different types of plastic, whatever it is. It's just different types of optics to create a sort. TOMRA has more than 4,500 employees now, a little over $1 billion US dollars in revenue. And West Sacramento is our hub for North America. Here in West Sacramento, we have about 100 people in the office, probably 200 or 300 people more throughout the United States, most of them here on the West Coast. And we will be hiring somewhere between 30 and 40 people this year, pretty close to this region. Those positions will likely look like field service engineers, applications engineers, technical sales assistants, project managers, marketing. So we've got a very, very wide range of people that we're going to be looking for this next upcoming year.
Great, thank you so much, Brendan. So we'll continue more with questions, but first I'd like to introduce Dirk Xu from Tactile. So Dirk, if you could give us a little background. Thank you.
Hi, Trish. Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me to your conversation. I am enthralled by the conversation that I watched specifically with Greg and Patrick and the real world sort of problems that are out there. Our company is focused on software that enables frontline workers. We all, as sort of knowledge workers, the sort of de facto sort of tool set for a desktop worker is an office suite, right? That tends to be Word, PowerPoint, Excel. There's other ERP solutions, there's video conferencing, that sort of thing. But the commonality is what is the user interface that we use to create and share content and data amongst each other. That is a desktop office productivity suite. Deskless workers, frontline workers, which are manufacturers, maintainers, operators, even defense, that sort of thing, in all sorts of applications. They, maybe they have mobile applications, maybe they have a laptop, that sort of thing, but that's not really digital transformation. Those things don't fundamentally change the way that people can capture knowledge, can access knowledge, can communicate with their other team members, and the technology that is starting to become mainstream is wearable computers that are typically in the form of augmented reality headsets. That tends to be a sort of a very science fiction scary word, but just imagine that you have a computer that you can wear on your head that you can see through and that can understand the context that you are working in and can also respond to you in a very natural way as a worker who's using their hands. So that like, what is a computer when you don't have a keyboard and a mouse? Well, it has to respond to your voice. It has to respond to hand gestures. It has to respond to gaze. It has to be integrated into your systems so that when you look at a piece of equipment, you can immediately get feedback there. And so what our platform, which is called Manifest, does is it makes it very easy for subject matter experts to capture their knowledge and codify that knowledge in such a way that anyone, either an or an undertrained worker, can access that knowledge for either training or operational use cases and do a job as if they were an expert. It's in effect, how do you enable downloadable knowledge, and how do you enable frontline workers to connect with other workers that are out there? The things that I heard in the first panel had to do with, challenges finding employees. challenges training employees. How do you entice people to come into this area? Now, I'm up in the Seattle area, and we work with we work with manufacturers, utilities, defense, all sorts of fairly industrialized frontline workers. And if you're in Seattle and you're at a job fair and you're between Microsoft and Amazon and you're King County wastewater treatment, like, how do you get people to come want to work for you? Well, you show them new technology. You say, see this technology, this is going to fundamentally change the way that these sorts of jobs are done, and we are going to invest in you. We're going to give you access to this technology, and this is technology that is going to follow you through your career. So in effect, you know, we're delivering digital transformation. Again, a bit of a catchphrase, but it's really real. I mean, we're talking about AI, we're talking about machine learning, that AI stack that Aaron threw up there, augmented reality. That is the interface through which the deskless worker understands, experiences, and interacts with all of the other components that make this up. So anyways, thank you for having me here, and excited to participate in this panel.
Great, thank you, Dirk. It's really interesting. I mean, we didn't even talk about some of these things until they came up in the conversation. So it's really an exciting conversation. So we'll get back to everybody, but want to talk next with Gabe. Gabe is our colleague at University of California Ag and Natural Resources. Gabe was on our ICT panel last fall, regional advisory, and so that's where we thought, you know, this application again of AI into our everyday lives and our sectors. What does that look like? And what are you doing, Gabe? So please introduce yourself and talk about the bridge here.
Yeah, so I work for UC Ag and Natural Resources. We've got this statewide network on the UC campuses in the field, where we work to really apply the science and technology in the industry and real world settings. We do this across all California ag, food industry, ecosystem services, et cetera. I'm a technologist and a business guy, not a scientist. I lead innovation at the intersection of food, ag, technology. I have co-founded an innovation program called The Vine, where we work to actually commercialize novel technology in ag and food sector, focused on a lot of these challenges that you're all describing, you know, climate, health, labor, ag, you know, the list goes on. We're expanding that in Greater Sacramento as a statewide hub. Also, I'm part of a new thing since we talked last fall, where I'm part of the leadership team on a new AI in the Food System Institute that UC Davis, Berkeley, Cornell, and others are leading. That's exciting because it really crosses, you know, the entire food supply chain, from crop breeding through farming, food processing, and nutrition. So I work really hard on those commercialization problems that incorporate deep science and technology, and many of those have already been described nicely. But intersecting robotics, artificial intelligence, biology, ICT, the list goes on, usually intersecting disciplines and sciences. We do that through innovation projects between companies like the ones on the call and our network of applied academics around California, or more deep partnership on R&D projects on the campuses. My work kind of initially focused on supporting entrepreneurs. Right now, I'm focused on farm automation, indoor agriculture, precision intelligent ag, with the underlying ICT infrastructure, artificial intelligence, broadband, and then open source digital ag for interoperability that someone mentioned, which I think is absolutely critical to the future of this. And then we're also very keen on food processing and novel food products in the coming year. Because this area of intersection of ag, food, and tech is so new, and the academic programs at the UC, CSU, and community colleges are not really caught up. You know, we're building the airplane as we're flying it. We're creating a new workforce program also that pairs students and employers in the new kind of ag tech sector, giving them real experiences, both at companies and in the university labs, but then also exposing them to the broader world of food and ag innovation. So a computer science student could learn about ag robotics. or an ag student can learn about using CT systems to manage irrigation, or chemistry students could learn about using big data and AI to create new food products. So really excited to talk about to this group, and I've learned a lot already, and so thanks for having me.
Thank you, Gabe. And if this word keeps coming up about intersectionality, interoperability across all this, and even Dirk, when you were mentioning, you know, some of the other kind of clients you have that are not necessarily directly related to ag and processing, things like water systems, that's partly under the purview of what Carrie Peterson's working on, is water and environmental technology. So all these pieces kind of do play into the industry as well. So Brendan, I want to go back and ask you, what did you think about the data that Ebony and Aaron presented? And just referencing again, within your own company, you're a technology provider to a lot of different kinds of companies, but what about within your own company and the workforce skills?
Sure. So yeah, there's a few things to touch on there. When we look at our own company, we have a lot of our R&D department is in Europe. So I mean, those are the people that are developing the newer AI technologies that we're using and developing what's going into the machines that we have. We use a lot of different types of AI in the machines. So for example, one of the sensors that we use is called BSI Plus. It's a biometric signature identification. And essentially what the sensor is it's a multispectral camera that looks at a lot of different wavelengths of light at the same time. And it's able to figure out how the reflection from those different wavelengths are different between what we're calling a good product and a bad product. And we use AI to determine how those different wavelengths work together and to create this biometric signature between, you know, one thing or the other. When we look specifically at some of the skills and such that we're hiring for, a lot of the technology that we're using is proprietary. So we have zero expectation that people are going to come in and understand the biometric system that we have. It's not a reality. So the things that we really are trying to find are people that have this multidisciplinary background. They understand electrical engineering. They're maybe not entirely focused on that, but they understand it. They understand mechanical engineering. So somebody that can really work on computers but can't turn a wrench is not super helpful. And the vice versa. You know, if they're really focused on mechanical but they're not so focused on the electrical, that's not as helpful either. One of the things that we have been focusing more and more on are effective communication skills. This is honestly probably one of the most important things that I could think of. I went to UC Davis. I studied agricultural systems and environment with an emphasis in communications, which is a terribly long title. But that little last part, the emphasis in communications, has probably brought the most value to my career. Understanding brevity, understanding writing for business. You know, so much of this stuff is now in emails. Like, how do you write an email that can dissect can be a fairly high level technological topic? How do you bring that down to something that anybody would understand? We've heard other people mention that already today. How to write an email so that you don't make people angry. Every single person on this call works with somebody, you know who that person is, right? That this person is extremely talented, and if they could only figure out how to write an email that doesn't make everybody angry, they would really go somewhere. So I would say focusing on that level of communication is equally important as to having both the engineering, both electrical and mechanical.
And Brendan, I think you mentioned, you have those kind of jobs, so the sales and even the kind of jobs that you do, global marketing and sales, and knowing how to support customers. What do you see in that realm?
Sure. So yeah, I guess I didn't really mention this at the beginning. My role is the global director of our nuts category. So anything that has to do with nuts, no matter where it is in the world. That means that I span across all of the different divisions within TOMRA. So we have a marketing department. There's a couple of people that work specifically trying to focus on more nuts related content. 40% of all tree nuts are grown here in California. So this is the main market that we focus on. But we still, are always keeping an eye on the other big markets, Spain, Italy, Turkey, China, India, depending on what the product is. And all of those different positions require some different skill sets. Some of them are the same. So for example, I mentioned a sales application engineer. That's somebody that typically has a 4-year degree. It's in science. They understand both the mechanical and the electrical engineering, at least a basic knowledge of it, and effectively be able to communicate with customers, because this person is customer facing. That is somebody that could eventually end up in maybe a sales role, maybe something else, but that's the same for our sales department. So when we hire an area sales manager, this person has to not only be effectively communicate with customers, build relationships, all the typical stuff that you would think about with a salesperson, but they also need to be able to understand the technology that they're selling and what that impact will bring to the customer. And that last part is the most important, because that impact, you saw Pat Andersen earlier talking about how important that was, that they had a line, they bought 12 of these laser sorter machines, and these things are not cheap in order to displace all of those hand sorters that they have. So understanding the meaningfulness of what the technology brings. So kids just got home, as you can tell. The dogs are barking and they're home from school. So
they're just contributing.
They're contributing.
Yeah.
But yeah, understanding what the technology brings, understanding the importance of minimizing food waste. We focus so much on that. Sustainability is such a big thing now. So everything that we do has a mindset of sustainability in the back of our minds. And another thing that we try to teach is that sustainability can mean profitability. That's really important. So there's a huge amount of food waste that happens. We make, there's not so much of it actually in nuts, because nuts are a relatively shelf-stable product, but we make peeling equipment, like for potato peelers, people that are making French fries. And being able to retain, maybe 1% more potato versus what you could do before turns into all of a sudden thousands of tons of food product that is now able to be used that would not be able to be used before. So that's really what we look for. Somebody that understands that, they understand the why behind, why these customers like Andersen or like other nut processors would be willing to invest in so many millions of dollars worth of equipment. They have to understand why.
That's a great description. Thank you so much, Brendan. And I want to come back after we have another conversation. You're raising the sustainability issue, because I know that overall there's up to 40% waste across our whole food system. That's the kind of thing a lot that Gabe's technologies are looking at, and it's a critical issue for resources and people, and making sure the food gets to people in need, and helping company operations. So critical issue that you raised there as well. Dirk, what did you think about the data that was presented? Also, same question. And where do you see the technology adoption among your clients?
Yeah, I mean, again, my head is spinning over the data that was presented in the findings as well as in the first panel, and I think that the conversation here, a lot of it is around enablement and enabling the right people to make the right decisions at the right time. And for the lens through which we see the world is this digitally enabled lens that makes it easier for knowledge capture and reuse and communication of these frontline workers. But the challenges is like the employment graph, for example, like we're seeing that as well, and there's an opportunity to establish sort of this new category of worker that is, our solution is not an automation replacement solution. Our solution is an enhancement, an enablement, and an extension solution. It enhances the capabilities of your workers. It enables them to do jobs that they weren't necessarily purely trained for, and it's an extension of the working lifetime of the workers and of employers to be able to maintain these most highly skilled workers, which are probably also the highest paid workers, but give them an ability to migrate into this knowledge capture and dissemination role versus the I don't want to be lifting 70 pounds, manhole covers the rest of my career role, right? So I think that the change, and by the way, I noticed that data ended in 2009, which was probably the end of the last census, or it tends to line up. I think it's interesting, the conversation that's going on around the census right now. But my guess is that when we get current data, those paths will have accelerated, right? Like every time you go through these new acceleration cycles, like it took 95 years to get 90% penetration of phone lines to homes, but it took 10 years to get 90% penetration for smartphones, right? As we went forward. So you have, as this technology becomes more mainstream, it accelerates. And by the way, the nature of AI and the nature of this technology and these applications is that it learns from itself, right? And because of that, when you're starting to apply that supercomputing technology to AI, and by the way, a big part of what we haven't really talked a lot about now is how you connect everything, and that's what is the modern network of the future. And we are a founding member of something called the 5G Open Innovation Lab. That's a resource up here in the Seattle area. And Gabe, speaking to you specifically, they're doing a lot of trials around digital agriculture with how 5G can connect to sensors in the field to deal with things. Brendan, like you mentioned, spoilage and loss of non-shelf stable products, right? And so the network is a big part of that as well. And when you combine cloud, AI, network, and then a new interface for deskless frontline workers that have never had the benefit of digital transformation before, you're going to see some dramatic changes in the makeup of that workforce and what that workforce is focused on. So again, for me, I'm as intrigued to be learning on this panel as I am participating.
Great, thank you, Dirk. So you mentioned the 5G, and that's a big issue in our region. Gabe has been very engaged in this, is we don't have a lot of the broadband technology access in our rural areas. So this has been a big area of focus for us at Valley Vision, managing a broadband consortium. We can't adopt these technologies, and it's not equitable for the companies and the workers in our rural communities. So that is a critical enabling technology in that regard. So I want to go to Gabe and then Brendan, and I want to ask you, given how a lot of this transformation and a lot of the skills have some engineering background or higher level type jobs, where do the community colleges fit in to the pathway and the K through 12? How do we create the pathways? What role can the community colleges build to help build this workforce of the future? And I want to note that Dirk added something in the chat. There's some resources there, and I want to salute my chef friend Patrick Mulvaney, who toasted a drink to broadband. So there we go. Okay, Gabe.
Yeah, well, I mean, community colleges, I work very closely with the community college system because I see really two critical roles. One, of course, is a pathway for many students into the four-year degrees, including University of California. And so I think part of the challenge, which has already been spoken about, is students don't even have an idea of the careers that are coming down the pike and the skill sets the integrative skill sets they're going to need. And that pathway often begins at community colleges. My high school senior is going through that process right now himself. So one is really giving those students, when they're in high school, a vision for the types of the careers that are coming, the types of skill sets they're going to need, and really partnering between the community colleges and the four-year universities on, giving them a vision for those options. Additionally, again, it's already been said here, but this integrative set of skill sets, turning the wrench, managing PLC systems, every sector, in whether it's food processing, we've got a new, some large new greenhouse operators coming into the region as well. They all kind of say the same thing. That there needs to be students that have this deep technology understanding. They may not know how to program the thing, but they needed to know how to use it and work with the supplier on the software side, but also work on the hardware side, and then be aware of the product, whether it's producing lettuce or whatever. So this integrated set of mechanical, computer science, and I think that we're going to have to go beyond, four-year degrees aren't moving quick enough to keep up with the needs of where industry is. So I think we're going to actually have to work really closely between the UC and the community colleges to create new, short course and other novel types of training programs that really blend both of our work and experience to provide employers with more real-time skill sets that employees can have that will meet the needs of these very specific jobs that are coming up as well. And so we've got a couple things, we've got for our new AI Institute. AI is a really big, broad topic, and I think we're finding that it's very difficult to get undergraduate students, either at the community colleges or in the UC system, really plugged in and working on AI projects if they've had absolutely no exposure. And so we're working on fellowship programs that will work on a variety of different technology or science-related internship programs, sometimes at the very, very boots on the ground level, but then creating some wraparound programming that will help expose them to a lot of different areas so they can at least get interested in learning more and getting some broader exposure, even as they're, working on a PLC system in a food processing plant as part of an internship. They might be exposed to the broader world of AI and other applications of it across other industries.
Well, thank you, Gabe, and we'll look forward, as we have been, to working with you on those pathways and new programs and exposures. And what Gabe mentioned about the greenhouses, and part of our drive in the region is to make enhance the Sacramento and Northern California region as a locus of all kinds of innovation across the food system, including new ways of growing. And we have some exciting new companies coming, and so we need a workforce for that. So I want to close with Brendan and ask you the same kind of question of how we can partner with you, support the work that you and others do to create opportunities for our students coming through the K through 12 and into the colleges and then to higher ed, that we have a integrated pathway for this integrative skill set.
Sure. So a couple things on this. As far as K through 12 and at the community college level, I think just getting some exposure to those main pillars that I mentioned at the beginning. So from the electrical engineering perspective, from a mechanical engineering perspective, and from a communications, just basically those three things together is something that would be very attractive to us. I think almost everybody that's in these roles has a four-year degree. So helping them, advance to finish a four-year degree is going to be really helpful. And one of the other things that I think could really bring a lot of value is is to help them understand, like help some of these potential employees understand how exciting this business is. Some of the best employees that we have are super passionate about the business. They understand that what we're doing is doing good, and that we're helping to reduce the amount of food waste in the world, and that we're sponsoring things that are, cleaning the oceans and, feeding children in need with nuts and dried fruit in South Sudan and Mauritania. Some of these other things that we do that are doing good, and to understand that there's a tremendous amount of value and a tremendous amount of pride to be had in this type of work. And I think just doing that will bring more and more people into this business. For the jobs that we need, if it's, the area sales managers, I've mentioned in that case, you need to be technical, but you need to be able to talk to a customer and sell. For an application engineer, it's the same thing. It's a customer focused engineer, but you have to be able to run the equipment and run the equipment well. Project management is a little bit different, where you're not necessarily involved in running the machines, but you have to be able to deal with every single department and multiple departments within your customers' facilities. So those are, I think that's really the main thing to get across here is, those three areas of focus that would really help us, and then also to generate excitement about this industry and where we're headed in the future.
Thank you so much, Brendan. That's a really eloquent closing. And I think it's a call to action for all of us about working with all of you to create these opportunities and this perspective and vision and awareness. And I know, Brendan, you and others have been engaged with some of the programs already. I just again want to refer people to the chat box. There's a lot of resources that our panelists and others have posted, and we're going to keep the conversation going. Joseph Taylor, again from Sac State, commented that the community colleges have a huge role to play in helping students identify career paths. And they recently published a video about business analytics program at Sac State. So I know the analytics on the business side is another piece of the kind of skills that you've described and that we're looking for. So
Trish,
I'm sorry. Yeah, we're getting on to our closing time. So I would like to bring back Cornelius Brown, who's going to just give us a quick overview of some programs. But I want to thank all of our panelists again, and Ebony and Aaron. It's really been just a dynamic, really thought-provoking conversation, and we're very grateful for your participation and look forward to the next step. So Cornelius, turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I won't say too much as I'm learning as well, but I want to echo something that Gabe and Brendan had mentioned, that the community college does have a role to play in here. And as you can see from this slide, there are several community colleges, especially one at Coastline College here in California, where we see that there is starting to be a pathway concerning AI, where rather it's dealing with data analytics, machine learning. So there is a start to AI in the community college level, and maybe we can all work together, put a program in Northern California, in the North Far North. Thank you. Thank you, Trace. Thank you,
Cornelius. Yeah, that would be great. We had a special project last summer with our partnership with the Rice Commission and a lot of our processors around AI, not so much AI, but ag tech in the food system. But now this is evolving into these broader things we've talked about. We did look at some other programs as well. So we want to match the capability of our educational resources here and our workforce preparation with the companies that we have here. So we'll be looking forward to working with Cornelius on these programs. And as we close, I'd like to ask Carrie and Jeff to make any closing remarks. We will get all the information out to everybody, the PowerPoints, the meeting notes, there'll be a recording. And we are really just, again, grateful for all of the audience to participate and all your contributions as well. So getting some nice comments in the chat box. We appreciate that. Carrie and Jeff, any closing comments?
I'll just say thank you to everybody for a great conversation.
And I'll echo that too. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining and sticking with us for the last couple hours. I think we certainly realized we have a lot of similarities, both in education and in our industry partners. And we're certainly glad that we can kind of get out of these silos and really start looking to do great things for students and get a really great pipeline developed.
Thank you, Carrie, Jeff, and Cornelius. So I want to direct your attention again before we close to the chat box. Brendan just posted information and did several others of our panel members. We really appreciate the dedication and the passion of everybody. And we look forward to continuing our work with you and how we bring this into our regional advisory meetings in the fall as well. So please stay in touch. We'll be in touch with you. And I'd like to thank our staff, Renee John, who is our workforce program leader, Jesse Flores, and Caitlin Blockus, our project associates. Jesse's been supporting our regional advisories, and Caitlin is new, so I think she's gotten a great view of these processes the last couple of weeks. So thank you again, everybody, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.